Hi, I'm Tiffany. Today, I'm going to show you how to multiply 2 and 3-digit numbers. Multiplying 2 and 3-digit numbers. When multiplying 2 and 3-digit numbers, there's two main things that you need to make sure you remember. You want to line up the numbers by place value, then multiply. You also want to make sure to add zeros at the beginning of the second row. Then afterward, you continue adding zeros. That may sound a little confusing, so I'll show you a few examples of how it's done. Let's start with example number 1. Example number 1. 14 times 12. They've given us our problem and it's written horizontally. I need to rewrite this problem, but I need to write it vertically so the numbers are stacked on top of each other. So in the last slide, I explained that you want your numbers to be stacked by place value. I'm going to tell you right now that when you're multiplying, the way you stack your numbers actually doesn't matter all that much, but for the way that multiplication is traditionally taught in the United States, we do stack our numbers by place value. So let's go on with that. So I have 14, and I'm multiplying it by 12. The order that you multiply your numbers looks like this. You start with the bottom number, and you're going to look in the ones position. In this case, the number in my ones position for my bottom number is a 2. And I'm going to take that number and multiply it directly above with the number that's directly above it. Then I'm going to go to the left and above, so that would go to the 1. If this were a 3-digit number up top, I would have to go one more time and come this way and multiply. Each time you multiply, you write your answer down. Let me show you what it looks like. I take my 2, I multiply it to the 4. I get 8. I'm going to write 8 down. I take the 2 again, I multiply it with the 1. I'm going to write my 2 down. There's no other number, so I'm done with my 2. Now it's time to start my second row. My second row is going to be where I multiply everything by the 1 that I have. If you remember in my last slide, however, I told you that when you start with your second row, you need to make sure you put a 0 in. So you're going to start with a 0 first before you even multiply anything. So here we go. 0. This is a crucial step. You must do this. Now let's multiply. I'm going to take this 1 and I go in the same order that I went in before. I'm going to multiply it with the 4 first. So 1 times 4 is 4. I'm going to take the 1 again and multiply directly above it. I have 1 times 1, and that's 1. Now I'm going to add these two numbers that I've created. 8 plus 0 is 8. 2 plus 4 is 6. And nothing plus 1 is 1. So my answer to example number 1 is 168. Let's move on to example number 2. Example number 2. Again, I need to rewrite my numbers. I'm going to stack them directly on top of each other, considering place value. It's going to look like this. 89. And I'm going to multiply by 20. I didn't mention in the last slide that I wrote my multiplication sign looking like an X, but they gave it to us looking like a dot. You may not be familiar with the dot just yet, but it is a representation for multiplication. When you get a little older and more advanced math, you're going to see this dot more frequently. So you could see this exact same problem written with an X here to represent multiplication, or a dot, and they both mean multiplication. So when I've rewritten it the more traditional way, I've written it with an X for my multiplication sign. But they both mean multiplication. So let's go on. Oh, I do want to add, you would never write a dot here and then multiply. You would always use an X when you're multiplying like this. Okay, now let's remember the same steps we took the last time we multiplied. We started with the number that was on the bottom, and we started with the digit that was in the ones place. For this example, the digit that's in the ones place is the 0. So we're going to take the 0 and we're going to multiply it by the number directly above, and then we're going to take the 0 and multiply it by the number that's directly above but to the left. So 0 times 9 is 0, and then 0 times 8 is 0. Did you notice that both of our answers were 0? If you think about this, you may not have thought of it on your own, I'll tell you. Whenever one of your numbers that you're multiplying has a 0, it is a 0, and it's on the bottom number, your whole row is going to end up being a 0, whichever row that 0 is in. For example, if there were a 0 here and maybe another number over here, all of my numbers in my second row, because that's the second position, would all be zeros, because every time that 0 multiplied against something, it was going to end up being a 0 is your answer, because anything times 0 is 0. Okay, so that's a quick trick. So that's what happened here. That's why this row is only 0. Okay, now it's time to start our second row. Coincidentally, we're going to write a 0 down. This has nothing to do with the fact that there is a 0 here. This has to do with the fact that on the very first slide I explained to you, when we multiply this way, we always put a 0 on the second row just to start out with. This is just a rule you need to remember. So let's put our 0 in. Now, this is the row of the answer for the numbers that are here in my tens place. In this case, we're dealing with a 2. So let's go ahead and multiply. 2 times 9, what's that? 2 times 9 is 18. Okay, we got a little trickiness. 18 is a 2-digit number. I cannot write a 2-digit number in the space for a single digit. So what I have to do is, I'm going to write 18 out here to the side. 18 looks like this. 8 is in the ones place on 18. That's the only thing I can write down. The 1 gets carried up above. It's sort of like when you're adding and you have to carry. Okay, sometimes in multiplication you have to carry. So we put our 1 up here. Now, when we take our 2 to multiply with the 8, we do that and we get 16, but then we have to add this 1. So we actually have to add just to do our multiplication when we're figuring out the answer to this column. So we're going to take the 2, multiply it times 8, we get 16. We take 16 and we add that extra 1 and we get 17. Now, because there are no more numbers to multiply against, we can just go ahead and write 17 down. Now we add all of this. 0 and 0 is 0. 0 and 8 is 8. Nothing and 7 is 7. And nothing and 1 is 1. So, I am now going to add a comma because I have an answer that is longer than 3 digits. So I can put a comma in there. So, the answer to example number 2 is 1,780. Let's move on to example number 3. We have 623 times 35. Let's rewrite this problem. I know that I'm going to have to carry a few times, just like we did in the last problem. So I'm going to write my problem over here, because it's going to give me a little more space to work with. 623. Let's fix that. Times 35. Okay, remember our order of multiplication? We're going to start with the number on the bottom in the ones position, so that's a 5. We're going to take that 5, multiply by 3, then 5 times 2, then 5 times 6, okay? We're going to write our answers down every step of the way. 5 times 3 is 15. Here's what I meant when I said we're going to have to carry. 15, again, is a 2-digit number. I cannot write both digits. Let's write 15 out so you can see it. I cannot write both my 1 and my 5 down here. I can only write the number that's in my ones place. So in this case, it is the 5 I can only write the 5 down and carry my 1. Now let's continue. Remember, the 5 gets multiplied by the 3, then the 2, then the 6. So now we've just done the multiplying by the 3. Now it's time to multiply by the 2. So 5 times 2 is 10. But remember what we did in the last example? When you have a number above it, you must add that number to it. So 5 times 2 is 10. 10 plus 1 is 11. So my answer for this next space is 11. But again, 11 is a 2-digit number, just like this one was. I'm going to write 11 in. What number is in the 1 place? A 1. So you write your 1 down. The other one gets carried. This one got carried right here. Let's continue. 5 times 6. That's 30. I have a 1 here, so I have to add it. That gives me 31. So, I write this down. 31. Now, it's time for me to multiply my next row. What was the rule I told you in the beginning? When we start our second row, you must start with a 0. Start with a 0. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 2 is 6. Okay, there is a markup here. It does not get added. Why does it not get added? Because we're dealing with a different number. We only add numbers that were carried when we were multiplying any number that we were on. So all of these, both of these ones, this one and this one, those were carried as we were multiplying our 5. So as we were filling out our row that came from multiplying with the 5, that's when we added those ones. Right now, this 3 hasn't had to carry anything. So we do not even see that 1. I'm going to pretend like both of these ones aren't even there. Only if I have to carry a number while I'm multiplying here will I add. So, my 3 times 2 is 6. Now, 3 times 6 is 18. Let's add all of our numbers. 5 plus 0 is 5. 1 plus 9 is 10. I have to carry my 1. This is normal addition. You need to know your rules for adding here. If you don't, you can check out my video for adding 2 and 3-digit numbers. Now this column, I'm adding a 1, and a 6. So these two ones are 2. 2 plus 6, that's 8. Here I have 3 and I have 8. When I add that together, I get 11. I'm carrying a 1 over. I have to put the other one down, and 1 plus 1 is 2. Add my comma in because my answer ends up being a number that is larger than 3 digits. So my answer to example number 3 is 21,805. Let's continue practicing with these. Let's move on to example number 4. Example number 4. They've helped us out. They've already stacked the number up. That's great. We don't have to worry about stacking the number up. Okay, we have 56 times 14. Remember, we're going to start with our 4, multiply by 6, take that 4, multiply by 5. Let's do it. 4 times 6 is 24. I cannot write a 2-digit number in my single-digit space, so I'm only going to write the 4, and the 2 gets carried. Now I'm going to multiply 4 times 5 and get 20, add 2, and I have 22. For my next row, I need to start with a 0. That's just a rule that you have to remember. There's nothing here that tells me to put a 0 except that's a rule. Now, I'm going to multiply my 1 by 6 and get 6. Now I'm going to multiply 1 times 5. Do I add my 2? No, you do not. You do not add that 2 because that 2 came when I was multiplying the 4. Right now, I've started multiplying my rows that come from multiplying by 1. So I'm not adding anything unless I had to carry something from multiplying by 1. So 1 times 5 is 5. So you're going to put that here. Now let's add. 4 plus 0 is 4. 2 plus 6 is 8. 2 plus 5 is 7. The answer to example number 4 is 784. Example number 5. 768 times 59. Let's multiply. 9 times 8 is 72. I must carry my 7, but I can write my 2 down. 9 times 6 is 54. When I add my 7, I get 61. So, again, carry my 6 and only write the 1 down. 9 times 7 is 63. 63 plus 6 is 69. I have nothing else to carry or deal with, so I just write 69 down. It's time for me to start my second row. So I'm going to start with my 0, a rule I have to remember. Now, I need to multiply 4 times 8. Okay? I get a 2-digit number. There's already a digit up here, so what do I need to do? I can just scribble these out. These only had to do with multiplying by my 9. So I don't need to see this anymore. Now it's like I'm starting fresh. So 4 times 8 is 32. I'm going to carry my 3 and write my 2 down. My 2 goes under the 1. 4 times 6 is 24. 24 plus 3 is 27. Carry my 2, write down my 7. The 7 is under the 9. 4 times 7 is 28. 28 plus 2 is 30. The 3 is not under anything. My 0 is under the 6. Now it's time to add these. 2 plus 0 is 2. 1 and 2 is 3. 9 and 7 is 16. So I'm going to have to carry here my 1, write my 6 in. 1 and 6 is 7. And finally, my 3 just comes down. I have more than 3 digits in my number, so I make sure to add my comma. And the answer to example number 5 is 37,632. I have one more example, guys. Let's go to it. Example number 6. Okay, we have 3 numbers on both the top and bottom. So this is going to be an extra line for us, okay? Let's see what this is going to look like. 5 times 1. 5. 5 times 5. 25. 5 times 9 is 45 plus 2 gives me 47. Starting my second row, I need to write a 0 in. 4 times 1, that's 4. 4 times 5, that's 20. This happens to be the same number that I would carry. I need to carry a 2, but really I'm on another row, so I'm going to cross this out to make sure we don't get confused. So I'm going to put a 2 here because that 2 comes from multiplying 4 times 5 and getting 20. A 0 comes here. That 0 comes from the 20. 4 times 9 is 36. 36 plus 2 is 38. Okay, it's time to go to our last row. Progressively, that means as you move on, you add more and more zeros. So, on your second row, you start out with just 1 0. This is the first example that I've given you with a third row because the bottom number has 3 numbers in it. However many numbers the bottom number has that you're multiplying by determines how many rows you're going to have. So, I have 1, 2, 3 digits on my bottom. So, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 rows. We're about to write our last row, okay? This bottom number always tells you how many rows you're going to have. So, the rule is that progressively, that's a new word for you probably, as you move on, you're going to add more zeros each time. So this row, you're going to put 2 zeros in. That's the rule. You just put 2 zeros in. If we were to go another row because there were another number here, we would have 3 zeros to start out with before you even start multiplying. Just like here, we had 1 0 before we even started multiplying. That's just a rule you need to remember. So now we're going to cross out this 2 in case we end up having a carry. We don't want to get confused which number we carried with. Okay, I got my 3. I multiply by 1. I get 3. So I just write 3 in here. I have 3 multiplied by 5, and that's 15. So I'm going to put my 1 up here, and I'm going to write my 5 in. 3 times 9 is 27. I have to add this 1, and I'm going to get 28. Add. Okay, let's make sure we understand how everything's lined up. The 5, 0, and 0 are in a column. The 5, 4, and a 0 are in a column. The 7, 0, and 3 are in a column. The 4, 8, and 5 are in a column. There's nothing here. Then the 3 and the 8 are in a column. There's nothing, and then the 2 is in a column by itself. So now let's add. We have 5, 0, 0. That gives us 5. We have 5 and 4 and 0. That gives us 9. We have 7 and 3. That gives us 10. So that means we have to carry a 1. Write our 0 in. Then we have 1 and 4. That gives us 5. I'm actually going to jump down here and add this other 5 first because that's an easy number to work with after. I know 5 plus 5 is 10. So this is 1 plus 4 is 5 plus this 5 gives me 10. And then add 8 gives me 18. So let's carry the 1 because we're going to only write the 8 in because it's a 2-digit number. 18 is a 2-digit number. 1 plus the 3 is a 4. 4 plus 8 is 12. Write my 1 here. Write a 2 here for my 12. 1 plus 2 is 3. I need to write a comma in, and it's going to go between the 8 and the 0. And the answer to example number 6 is 328,095. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, don't forget to click like, then head over to supereasymath.com for more math tutorials, printable video notes, worksheets, and more.